Welcome, everybody, to the Netherkast. I am Cyborg, and I am joined, as always, by Temp, Shad, and Razor, and our special guest, other Nethercastian, Smokeman. And we are going to be talking about our favorite memories for Mortal Kombat vs. DC, and I give a retrospective as continuing with our anniversary talks that we started last year. Starting us off with MK vs. DC, Smokeman, why don't you start us off on some MK vs. DC? It's a special place in your heart.
Off?
It's a special place in your heart. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're in this episode because this was your first game. So
Yes, it was my very first game.
So there you
You
go.
said you wanted to be here.
Yeah,
I
talk.
did.
Say things.
I remember this was around 2008, right? That
That's
was
right.
when I was really actually starting to get more into DC and Batman and shit. Because as growing up as a kid, I didn't like DC. I mainly only liked Marvel, and I thought DC was lame and dumb.
Saying a lot of these things with upward inflections.
Fuck off. Be nice.
It's that water. It's the water, damn it. You need a good soda running through you.
All right.
Just kidding.
That's-
Drinking a Coke.
So I saw a fucking commercial for MK versus DC, and I just saw that it was a fighting game with DC characters, and I'm like, ooh. I eventually I never got the game when it came out, but a friend of mine did, and we played around with it, and he was like, yeah, all the DC characters are kind of cool, but then there's also these other characters here that are kind of cool, like this guy's Scorpion, he's fucking rad.
Right.
Yeah, and we'd do the Xbox Live thing where we'd go online and lose badly, but then curse him out really bad on the microphone. It was great.
Oh. Alrighty.
I remember because I didn't know that Mortal Kombat was the thing with the fatality and the
Right.
fatalities and shit. So when we're online and we're playing against a guy, a Superman, he does a fucking heroic brutality. We're like, what the fuck is that? What do you do? How do you do that? And I don't know. That's the most memory I have from MK versus DC. I would eventually get it on my own, but yeah.
When did you see the 95 movie for Mortal Kombat then?
I didn't see the 95. Well, we're gonna get to MK9, all right? We're gonna get to MK9. I'll get there.
Okay.
Alrighty. So
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
All right. Well, is that all you have to say for MK versus DC?
I mean,
or-
we can get in. I mean, we're talking about memories and shit, right?
Right.
It's kind of all I got for memories. We can delve more into that game and what I like about it later, but I don't know.
No thoughts about the story mode, the horrific training mode. Tobias
I
comic?
actually never read the Tobias comic. I fucking hate that those combo trial things. Those are fucking awful. And the game is so jank. How the fuck do you expect me to do this shit? You know what I mean? And fucking the story mode was I the story mode's dumb, right? That shit has the rage and shit the whole time, and I don't know, doesn't not a whole lot to say about the story on my end.
Alrighty. We could jump to temp. That's fine. And we'll circle
But
back.
I don't know. Scorpion's costume is great in that game. That's my favorite Scorpion costume, period, because that's the one that incorporates the mask from the
The bone
MK2
mask.
commercial. Yeah, the
Yeah.
one that looks like a rib cage or a spine or something.
Yeah.
That shit was rad, and Baraka looks great. Oh, that's one thing. Baraka was my favorite character. My favorite Mortal Kombat character. When that game came out, because he was super fucking fun. Once you got his blades out, your fucking normals just turn super fucking fast, lightning fast, and it was fucking awesome. I fucking love Baraka in that game, and that's why I was really hoping for him in 9. But when I played him in 9, he just lost that savage quickness to him, you know? He's just kind of like very slow and low tier as fuck. But
Baraka was not great in 9. That is true.
yeah, I think the Flash was done better in. I think the Flash and Joker were done better in versus DC than they were in Injustice. But
I mean, I think the Flash is straight up broken.
no, he's
versus
straight up
DC.
broken. Like he was a problem.
Yeah.
But like with like the effects and the sound effects and the moves, I think it better represents the Flash than he does in the Injustice games.
I seem to remember that they tried to tone him down a couple times, but it just didn't work. It was like UMK3 Cabal.
I love the fucking move where I don't know if it's a throw move or if it was a special. It's where like he like dashes past you like 3 times and the opponent's just left spinning there.
Right.
And I really love the sound effects on that where he's just like boom, 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 and he does this fucking sick slide, and it's like, damn, that's sick. Why the fuck isn't he doing that in Injustice?
I do enjoy that they gave him just Cabal's dash, but to make sure you understand he's faster than Cabal because he's the Flash, he runs past you 3 times.
Mm-hmm. And there's also that nice little Cabal nod where Kano's like, he can give Cabal a run for his money.
Yeah, they threw that line in there.
Um,
The thing that always stuck with me about the Flash in that game is when his render was released, and it's like he's got that fuzzy texture to his suit, like from the '90s TV show.
dude, that's the best shit.
I don't know. I don't think I like it. I feel like
I like it
if
ironically.
yeah, it's just I feel like if you wanted like the most aerodynamic suit because you run fast, you might want it to be smooth and shiny or something. I don't know if I would have gone the hey guys, remember the 90s show angle? Like I do remember the 90s show. You know, Mark Hamill as the trickster was pretty good. But I don't know about that suit. That's all I'm saying.
I do kind of like what they did with the Flash's suit. Like I like the way that the belt is textured. I kind of like there's like a detail in the front of the boots that have like this like lightning motif, and I think that looks really nice.
Yeah, the boots are. I don't like the gloves.
Okay, yeah, the gloves kind of suck.
Yeah, he's got these big yellow like dishwashing gloves, but with like lightning bolt logos on them. It's
It
kind of tacky.
the way that they look. So I'm looking at the underside of them, where like the underside just doesn't have like any glove there. It's like 2 straps. And like
Yeah,
it reminds me of this old toy from the Fantastic Four movie where it's like Mr. Fantastic's arm and you pull the trigger and it will like extend out, and like the arm had like that same sort of like thing where like the glove of the arm would only cover like the top of your arm. That's what this glove for the Flash is reminding me of.
it's sort of. I don't know. I think it was a mistake for them to take liberties with the costume designs for some characters when other characters like Superman were going to be like perfectly loyal to the comics. It
Well,
just creates a weird mix and match.
what were the other costumes that they changed?
Well, I mean, Batman's got a bunch of weird seams on him. Green Lantern's suit is like the shape of his normal outfit, but it's made of a bunch of like puzzle pieces.
Wait, really?
uh, Catwoman is kind of a mix of her like the design she usually wears with the goggles and the purple color scheme from like the mid 90s.
Oh my god, does Green Lantern have ribbed legs?
Yeah, it's weird.
Oh, that's weird looking. Yeah, I don't like that.
And especially because like they're trying with the graphics to give them all like Alex Ross faces, like especially Hal.
Yeah, I'm seeing that here.
But
That's all I got. Temp, you want to go?
All right, Temp, your thoughts on MK versus DC, memories going back to that time, that deep dark period for you?
So, like, this is the only Mortal Kombat game I've never purchased to this day. I was really disappointed when it was announced.
Yeah.
Not so much because I didn't like the idea, but more because, well, I mean, we don't need to talk about the countdown again, but that was a big reason. They really dropped the ball on that.
Oh, I
Well, go
forgot
ahead,
about
mention it,
that
man.
shit.
Mention it. Not
This is what
everybody
this shit is
might
for,
remember
man.
that.
Yeah,
well, I had to
like,
wait through multiple countdowns for a game that didn't exist, so that stung a lot. Probably the. Well, what's up, Chad? Go on.
Well, what was the countdown? Can you explain what
like
happened?
for those of us who weren't, for our listeners who were not there during the
Right.
time, because I'd actually forgotten about the countdown until you mentioned it. That was some funny shit.
Well, basically, there was a countdown that I want to say was like a month out. Like, it was a pretty substantial countdown. I
And
can't
this
remember
was on
exactly.
noob.com.
yeah, so
Yeah.
So back in the day before MK9, like in the Midway days, Ed Boon had his own website, and he'd post like weird teases, and it, like these sort of puzzles. You just had to figure out what it had to do with anything. It was almost like a really bare bones ARG he was constantly running. And before MK versus DC was announced officially, he put a countdown clock up. And when the countdown clock ran down to 0, it started a second larger countdown clock.
It did. It 100% did.
And this is a somewhat infamous moment for those of us who were in the fandom at the time. And longtime listeners to the podcast may remember that we've referenced Countdown to a Countdown as a joke before. It's stuck with us.
I just checked. That website is so gone. He
Yeah,
does
it's
not.
been-
He is not
As
been
it should
paying
be.
up.
As it should be. No, and it was so disappointing because I would have been okay with 100 countdowns if we got a legitimate Mortal Kombat 8. And we got MK versus DC,
Right.
which, again, I would have been open-minded to something like that because I've never cared about fatalities, at least not for like the last.
I mean, here's
20
the
years, right?
thing: is as of the story of MK11, MK versus DC is now canon. It actually is MK8. It literally happened between Armageddon and the second Armageddon that we see in the first cutscene of MK9. It's a universe Chronica created and then got rid of.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, like, is MK11 canon?
I mean, to itself.
Yeah, exactly. Precisely, right? So, yes, it's a technically canon, sure. This kind of goes back to the whole broken vases thing we were talking about before the show. I just feel like that, like, if we got Mortal Kombat 8, I would have been okay with that. As we wanted it, like, right? Like, you know, you can make like an adaptation of like Biodome and call it Mortal Kombat and say technically this was created by Chronica. Sure,
I mean,
fine.
yeah,
But like,
if a timeline falls in the wood and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound.
but MKO was especially important because we were all trying to figure out what's going to happen after Armageddon. And we found out that we had to wait at least 2 more years to find out after 2 countdowns. So it was like, oh man, so frustrating. And the game itself, I thought it looked all right. I thought the roster was bad. I think it was way too small of a roster considering, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Tiny.
And it was a small roster with no alt costumes. That was funny. And I'm sure there was a great reason for that. I remember them giving a great reason for that multiple times with like all the designs to be approved, whatever, right?
I mean, the great reason is that Midway was going out of business and could not afford to make a bigger game.
Well, I heard that WB had to approve all the costumes.
Well, sure, for the
yeah.
DC characters. But you know what's an easy way to get them to approve an alt costume? Is to pull one from the history of the comics.
I would say
DC's not gonna say no to Wonder Woman in like the black outfit from the 90s because they're the ones who made it.
Yeah, maybe.
I think if we were deeper into the DLC era, that probably would have happened. Quan Chi was canceled DLC. Harley Quinn was canceled DLC.
They've actually
Um,
said there was going to be a second round with Kung
Kung
Lao and
Lao.
Aquaman.
oh, I didn't
No, I
know
think
that.
it was actually Doomsday. I think.
Well, no, it might have been Kung Lao and Robin.
I think
I-
it was Kung Lao and Robin. Yeah.
Yeah, it
I
was
feel
not
like it
Doomsday.
was
Here's the thing: is that Doomsday and Lobo were heavily requested, which is why we got them in Injustice 1.
Right.
But there's a pattern there of NRS always being one game late on answering those requests. So they had no
Oh.
intention of putting Doomsday into MK versus DC. But when they heard that the fans wanted it, they didn't get a chance to get around to doing it until Injustice.
That pattern is still going strong today.
I mean, they got around to Molina, right? So
That I
Yeah.
guess, but
That was the tail end. That was the very last one. But
I'm thinking of fucking Fujin.
not
yeah.
just Fujin, but also Spawn. Spawn was a game late, basically from when he was at his highest request.
Yeah, I thought Spawn was fine in 11, but he would have been he would have fit in a little better, I think, in Injustice 2.
Yeah.
That's all right. You got Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, Ninja Turtles.
Ninja Turtles are cooler than Spawn.
They are.
I agree.
But they're in Injustice 2, though, so that's a problem.
In MK versus DC.
Well, I mean, there's not much to say, to be honest with you. I was disappointed when they revealed it. I thought the roster was too small. I don't like most of the choices.
You know, the weird thing is, compared to other NRS era MK games, 22 is not that small a roster. It's just that when you're dividing it between two universes,
it's 10 characters.
It's actually it's 11 characters per universe, counting the unlockable Shao Kahn and Darkseid.
Right.
And a lot of us don't know anything about DC back then. Like, and even like the DC characters I did know about, I'm not gonna fucking play.
Well, here's the
like,
thing: when this game came out, it was after Justice League Unlimited had been a show. So some people out there, like myself, were big DC fans already. I don't want to get too much into that until it's my turn, but
yeah, and I mean, I didn't like have cable for like 4 years before this game came out, so I didn't know like anything about. I didn't know who Green Lantern was till this game came out. Actually, believe it or not.
Crazy.
What year did the Jeff Johns run start? 2011?
the Jeff Johns run started in 2005.
Okay, well, I mean, at
That's
that
not too
point,
far apart.
at that point, it's reasonable to believe that only comic fans knew who Green Lantern was.
Well,
Still,
I was aware of Green Lantern since the mid '90s because I saw him in a coloring book at Walmart.
I was aware of
that
Green
was-
Lantern as a
was
kid
the-
reading Batman comics in the late '80s. The thing is, I just didn't care.
Yeah.
Nobody cared about Green Lantern at all for years and
Well, the
years
thing
until
is,
like
this was the Kyle Rayner version when he had just come out, so he was he had a little bit of that new hotness. I didn't really know anything about him until I'd seen him guest star on Superman the Animated Series.
What's crazy about coloring books, right? Is that when you get a pack of crayons, the green crayon is the first to go, always. Like, it's the first to be lost, it's the first to be used up. No exceptions. So a Green Lantern coloring book is like the most fucked up thing, right? What's up?
Everything has grass, right? You got to color in the
trees.
backgrounds.
Yeah, it's fucked up. So a Green Lantern coloring book is like the worst idea ever. But yeah, so anyway,
back then, but now there's all sorts of colors to choose from.
Well, what Cyborg said it was not entirely wrong. It was kind of a dark time because I just graduated. I couldn't find a job, so I was working at GameStop, and I was just kind of lounging at a house with like 4 other guys, just partying like 3 times a week. And I eventually did not rent, but when you work at GameStop, you're allowed to take some games home and pretend that there's still new games when you bring them back. And I did that with MK versus DC. Naturally. And I wanted to play the game not because I like the DC elements or I thought I was interested in the story mode, but I didn't really know what the scale was yet till I played it. The reason I wanted to play it was because it was a next gen Mortal Kombat, and that was really fascinating to me. I'm like, okay, like I want to see high res Sub-Zero. I want to see. I guess back then it would have been 480p Raiden. Like I think
I think it was 720. I think it was a little better.
could the Xbox 360 do 720?
Yeah, it could.
Okay, it's
HD.
been a while. So yeah, and I played it. I thought it was okay. 2 days later, after I beat the story mode, I brought it back to GameStop, and I didn't really think much of it, to be honest with you. I wish I had more to say. But yeah, I would definitely like the roster is the one thing I would change more than anything. I'd make it slightly bigger. Kano has got to go. I'd even say, sorry, Smoke Man, but Baraka and Jax probably have to go too.
You piece of shit.
Yeah.
Well,
If it were up to me, Sonya would go.
So the thing that was mystifying to me was they advertised heavily the idea that they picked the characters they did based on who is the most iconic.
Yeah.
And then Kano instead of Johnny Cage, Baraka instead of Johnny Cage.
Or Reptile.
It just doesn't.
I was
It doesn't add up, man.
Well, who? Well, now I gotta know. So you were gonna replace Temp.
I really doubt that. I really do.
Temp,
Those results are fixed.
Temp, you said you were going to ditch Sonya, Kano, Jax, and Baraka. So if you drop those 4, who do you want in there?
And Shang, by the way. I probably would not put Shang in the game if I'm being completely honest with you.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
What?
Well, I gotta know.
So-
I gotta know. So 5 characters.
Reptile, Melina, Johnny Cage, and probably one of the cyborgs for sure.
Dude,
I would
you can't get rid
represent
of
all the
fucking
eras of Mortal
Shang.
Kombat.
Yeah, I definitely
we-
like the idea of represent. I even remember back in those days, everyone was expecting before like Baraka got revealed and stuff. People were thinking it was gonna be like a cyborg or whatever.
Well, here's the if you're really committed to trying to figure out who the most iconic characters were in 2008 and do those, the only part of the roster I would change is switch Baraka for Johnny, because then you've got the 95 movies cast.
Oh, I'm fair,
Like,
but the
Melina
problem,
was not really a thing until MK9. Like, she was the also ran version of Katana because she'd never been in a movie or like barely in the TV shows.
well, I
She was
reject the
in
whole iconic criterion to begin with,
Annihilation.
though.
Yeah, she's
But if you look at the
in
select screen,
Sort of.
it's largely like a bunch of dudes. Jax is a dude. Kano is a dude.
Yeah, it's-
Sonya is a dude. A
Yeah.
chick, but still a dude, right?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Sub-Zero is a dude with ice powers. Katana is a chick, but also a dude.
Hey.
Baraka's probably the least offensive one here, just because he has some sort of variety.
Yeah,
I'm just not a big Baraka fan. His shoulder pads are also obnoxious. What the fuck?
Oh, shut
Um,
the fuck up! I love his shoulder pads.
Dude, that's the best Baraka ever looked. Come on. It's still his best outfit.
He looks great in that game. Shut
I
up,
don't know.
Ted.
I don't hate it, but I do kind of prefer him in the white tank top.
yeah.
I mean,
I'm a white
yeah,
tank top
but
guy.
it's still a good costume for him.
Those shoulder
For
pads
Baraka,
are
not for me.
massive.
You know what?
Oh,
you know what? You don't complain about massive shoulder pads for Shao Kahn, do you?
Well, that's Shao Kahn.
I mean, I like Shao Kahn for very different reasons. Like, I
Okay,
don't like Shao Kahn because I like to play as Shao Kahn in the
Okay.
games. I like him from a literary perspective. I don't like Baraka from a literary perspective.
Look. Also, like when I say that, I don't mean MK versus DC Shao Kahn shoulder pads that look like Pringles.
Let me pull up
I have a
Google.
problem with
One
the Pringles
second.
pads.
I mean, the thing
The
I think
Pringles
most
are-
is
Pringles pads, they're fine.
You like the Pringles pads? I
I
don't know,
said
man.
they're fine. I didn't say I like them. I said I don't have a problem with them. There are degrees.
My problem with them is that they look like Pringles.
Reptile. I still
They
think
look
should have been in there.
delicious.
I don't know how he cracks his
Reptile
neck
would-
without stabbing himself in the temple. It's so bad.
Reptile is the
so
least just
bad.
dude on there, you know? Could have got him.
Yeah,
in there.
I think there was still paranoia about the palette swaps back then, or the just there was a lot of insecurity around the number of ninjas in these games. I think.
No,
I think that
it's just,
persists even to this day.
I think they
which is
just have
weird.
it's a limited number of slots. Somebody gets cut. I just don't understand why Johnny Cage was one of them.
Well, Sector was gonna be in the game. There was concept art for him.
If it was, I mean, if it was
I've
made
never
today,
heard
there's
that.
no way
There
Johnny Cage wouldn't be on there.
is.
This is
I have screenshot evidence from like a behind the scenes thing. There's like they were working on in this screenshot. I don't know for sure where it's from, but I know it shows two pictures of concept art on somebody's desk. One of them is Wonder Woman and the other is Sector.
weird.
I mean, it would have helped so much because we have all these fucking dudes on the select screen. It just looks so boring to me.
Yeah,
It's got
I
a
mean,
lot
I
of
agree
male
with
energy,
that.
as they say.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely. I mean, that's kind of the complaint we have with everything being so special forces centered to this day is they're just people. Like doesn't
Kano obviously is the biggest offender here. Like, I really don't. Kano sticks out so badly on that select screen.
But Temp, he's I-Man.
He's also Billy Mays, which is like the one thing, his one saving grace for this game. But yeah.
Oh, actually, Shang and Katana are in this shot too. Here,
Yeah, I remember Shang being in the shot.
there you can see. Sector is there under the pencil sharpener.
Is that
Oh
Brainiac?
God! Isn't that the weird mask that he wore for like Armageddon or like in the Armageddon
Yeah,
concept art or something?
I think it's his Armageddon alt skin, but it's in the same art style as all these other pictures, so I don't
Yeah.
think it's from Armageddon. I think it's
I do think you're right about that maybe being a Brainiac sketch in the lower right corner.
Yeah.
he has the three circles in a Y shape. That might be an unfinished Brainiac drawing.
Interesting.
All right.
That's all I got.
All right.
Yeah.
So for me, MK versus DC, I think I was one of the more. I tried to go back recently and see on MKO like what I had to say about it because I mean it's all kind of a blur at this point. I don't remember hating it, like the idea of it at the time. I definitely wasn't among that kind of that wave of definite backlash when it first got announced because yeah, that was a lot in the community were pretty much against it. As a DC fan, still at that point, I mean I've been a Batman fan since I was a kid, like super young. I didn't hate the idea. I thought it was weird. And then when it came to things like there'll no blood versus there will be blood and all that fun stuff that was going on back then, noob.com and all that, like I don't know, like the gore and all that has never been a main factor for MK for me. So that T rating and all that didn't really affect my opinion either. It didn't really upset me. Like the heroic brutalities, as silly as they are, ultimately we still got fatalities and all that.
The heroic brutalities were harmless. I don't know why people like hate them so much.
Yeah, I mean there were. I mean you go all the way back to the Super Nintendo version of MK1 and it having, you know, some decent fatalities on there without, you know, them being like super like bloody or anything. So I don't think that should have ever really been as crazy of a hate reason, I guess. But
I mean, like the hero's got to do something too for the mechanic. Like, Jesus Christ! Like, come on.
but yeah, ultimately, I mean, not to like so the mentality back then was this could be the end of the MK franchise. There was people selling off their Mortal Kombat stuff. They were done being MK fans. Not to put Kenshi Master on blast, but he's a part of our community, so I gotta because it's funny. But I mean, I dug up like
Oh my
posts of
God.
his during when it was first announced, and he said Mortal Kombat's done for. It's never gonna last. This is gonna drive it to the ground. This franchise is dead. They'll never, you know,
him being a little over dramatic.
they'll never recover. You know, they'll never recover from this, and he ultimately like turned around within like 2 days, was completely optimistic about it within a 2-day period, as it typically goes. I mean, it's funny, and I'm not, you know, crapping on him. That was a lot of what people had to say at that time. So I'm not even necessarily blaming him for reacting like that. You know, this is something special to a lot of people. It was just more funny that it started off saying this was, you know, the franchise was over, and honestly, I think it outsold Armageddon like 2-1. Basically, I looked up the sales number, and it was pretty. It sold pretty well, and then obviously the franchise just got sold more and more as it as it went on from that point. So it was definitely the opposite of the end of the franchise, at least from a, you know, a sales monetary standpoint. We could, you know, maybe talk a little bit differently in terms of story direction and integrity and all that fun stuff. But that being said, though, like I didn't hate it. I actually really enjoyed the gameplay aspect of it. I was part of the group that really wanted to see return to 2D for the game in terms of fighting plane. So getting that 2.5D basically like MK4, going back to side steps and all that. I like that a lot. So I was higher on MK vs DC's gameplay than I was on like Armageddon and Deception and so on, just from a pure it playing more like what I want Mortal Kombat to play as, just that 2D. So it was kind of like a half step to that. And for that, I really appreciated it. I was optimistic from a gameplay standpoint where we're going as a franchise. So I thought that was cool. I agree that the roster was not great. Just mainly because, yeah, when you only bring it down to 10 or 11 representatives from each side, that is not a lot at all. Marvel versus Capcom games like 2 and whatnot had a lot more than that per side. So it sucks that that's all we got. Story mode is a rough patch because, I mean, that's the start of the chapter system right there. So we're still paying for that. I mean, in a way, it's great because a lot of people love Mortal Kombat story and the way the mode is presented. I have friends that don't even buy the games because they don't like fighting games, but they still look up the story on YouTube, look up all the cutscenes, like piece together on YouTube and watch through all that because they like Mortal Kombat as a franchise, not necessarily to play it. So obviously it still appeals to a lot of people. Most people outside of like, the hardcore fan base that's, grown more irritated by some of the way they tell their stories with the chapter system and all that and the story being told. Just from like a casual perspective, I think story mode is something people really, really love about how Mortal Kombat is handled. And like the chapter system and all that. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a pro and a con in a way. It's a blessing and a curse where it's makes a lot of people happy that they do long form story modes like this. But yeah, I just wish they didn't do it in the chapter system. But we've talked a lot about that even recently, so I won't go too far down that road. The combo stuff was difficult because this is before I even knew how to combo or took the time to learn it. That didn't really come till later when I started playing with like Temp and everybody online. So that was really challenging. I completed like I want to say 80% of them. There was still like 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever it was that I just could not do because they were really, really difficult. I remember having a pain in the ass time trying to complete jokers, like the one where you got to like catch them and do like the heel kick 3 times to their face and you had to rapidly tap it or something. I don't know. That one I just could never get through. So that happened with some of the characters where I'd get to like their 9th or 10th and just could not get past it. I've yet to go back and try them since being getting better at that stuff. So I would imagine I'd probably get through it these days. But still, those like from a casual perspective, those things were a pain in the ass. Those were not easy. Trying to think what else. Yeah, I mean, I just thought the overall idea was kind of cool. I like the Marvel versus Capcom series. So, Mortal Kombat versus DC, kind of my 2 favorites coming together, I thought would be kind of cool. Ultimately, I don't care if we ever see it again. Like, I'm not jonesing for a MK versus Injustice or anything like that. And quite honestly, I mean, I've moved on to the point where I don't like Mortal Kombat characters in my Injustice, and I don't like DC characters in my Mortal Kombat. Like, with both of them having their own fighters, those are the guest characters I really don't like, just because we've already had MK versus DC and they both have their respective franchises. Like as fighting games, to me, there's little reason for me to see them kind of, especially because it's always the characters we get in every game, anyways. It's like it's Scorpion, and then it's Sub-Zero, and then it's Raiden, and who the hell else was it? Raiden and who in Injustice 2? There was 2 MK characters.
Sub-Zero.
Sub-Zero. Yep. Duh. Okay. There's only 2 Injustice games. So yeah, Scorpion and then Raiden and Sub-Zero. So it's like it's all the characters we get anyways. Just like coming from Injustice, we got Joker. So it's like, of course, it's the most popular that would never miss a game of their own series that we're gonna get in the other series.
As bad of a choice that the Joker is for 11, I did really like the way that they outdid him
Oh,
and
yeah.
his animations and stuff in 11.
For sure.
'cause
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I,
I mean,
I,
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm not
I
crapping
always
on how they
have
actually, executed it at all. I thought he was cool.
I always have this thing with the Joker where like if he's super fucking edgy, like outside of the Dark Knight, like it's just not appealing to me. What what appeals to me about the Joker is that like he thinks that crime is funny and shit like that. And I like that the Joker had much more of a sense of humor in 11 than he does in fucking the Injustice games where he's just fucking edgelord man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I will say of like Mortal Kombat games, this is probably one of my least played though. Like as much fun as I had with it, it didn't last super long. And God, one funny story is I had it on launch night, of course, and I go online with Sub-Zero. I'm kicking ass. I'm trying to get the achievement that you had to do because it's one of those really just like bullshit, super difficult achievements. It was like win 20 ranked matches in a row achievements or something like that. Man, they were really bad about that in the around that era for Mortal Kombat leading into MK9 and such on just having insanely difficult ones that, required you to be very, very good and get a little bit of lucky. But anyways, so I was trying to get that achievement online launch night because that's when you're going to get the scrubbiest of scrubs, anyways. I mean, hell, I could make a career at being good at Mortal Kombat on launch night and just being great at just beating on people before they know what they're doing. Once they know what they're doing, I might get, stomped to the ground. But anyways, so I remember the reason why I laugh about this is because I beat somebody with Sub-Zero pretty hard, and he said he told me, "I bet you play this game all the time," and it was launch night. So you probably play this game
That
all the
guy-
time.
Oh my
That
Like,
guy,
okay, dude.
that guy's
Captures
funny.
advantage.
The salt.
But yeah, that memory is stuck with me. Like, what a funny thing to say to somebody on launch night.
I mean, it's funny you say that because when MKX came out, there was a huge controversy that the people who worked for NRS and tested MKX were allowed to enter the tournaments, and people
Yeah.
were like, "Does anyone see anything wrong with this? Maybe something, maybe a little something wrong with this."
Right. Yeah, that's messed up.
And it's messed up, but it's also funny. It's very
Yeah.
funny.
My only other thought on MK versus DC is, well, I guess two more things. So the first thing is obviously there's the pro and con of it, right? Because Midway was going out of business. This was their last game under the Midway umbrella, and it sort of served as the bridge to WB. Without MK versus DC, I doubt WB would have even bought the Mortal Kombat franchise, which could be a blessing, could be a curse. So that's why I say it's kind of like a pro and con situation where, in one hand, we got a huge company that MK would never have to worry about like financials ever again, which was what happened with Midway. They were basically the only thing keeping that ship afloat there at the end, and that's why they were pumping them out the way they were. But on the other hand, it's nice that you're under a company that you don't have to worry about that. But then on the other hand, obviously there's the potential of the negatives of having such a big company, be under that umbrella because it's going to come with more control, more, restrictions and whatnot, especially a company as big as WB. Like even if it was a bigger company, we're talking about a massive, multi-billion-dollar company that has so many big name franchises for it. So in a way, it's a blessing and a curse in that like the MK franchise was saved and nobody had to worry about, are we going to get another Mortal Kombat ever again, or what is going to happen? Go ahead.
I would say that I mean the past couple years with all the like Warner's getting bought by Discovery and stuff like that, we are sort of seeing that.
Yeah, that's true.
As we learn more about their corporate structure and situations, maybe we do have to be worried about Mortal Kombat getting sold off again.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, I guess in today's day and age, even the big companies, it's not necessarily they're going to go bankrupt, but they get sold, like you said, to an even bigger company. People are just consuming each other.
I mean,
It's
the thing is
insane.
that when one of these like mega companies buys another one, they usually have to take out big loans to do it, so that they start in debt
Right.
and then they have to sell off assets to recoup that
Yeah,
debt.
they do massive layoffs, massive, cost cutting and all that to maximize profits. Yeah, for sure. You're not wrong. So yeah, I guess that is a factor technically. Didn't even think about that, but you're right.
You did make me think of something though that I feel like has plagued like sort of like the DC games ever since MK versus DC. And for a crossover fighting game, these games are not terribly bombastic, like when you compare them to Marvel versus Capcom, right? In Marvel versus Capcom, if you do a super with Morrigan, she pulls out like a rail gun that is like 5 to 6 times larger than her. She's wearing safety goggles for safety, and a laser beam fills up the entire screen, and then the opponent falls down and gets back up, right?
Yeah.
You never got anything like that. And in Justice 1, 2, or MK versus DC. Every DC Mortal Kombat fighting game or NRS fighting game looks like a fight broke out at a costume party. It doesn't have anything bombastic about it at all. It's so
I mean,
I would disagree with some of the
they-
supers. Like the
they
supers can get pretty
tried,
nuts.
you know?
I mean, they do a different kind of bombastic
Yeah.
now, where with like supers and stage transitions, like Superman will, there's a lot of punching you into the sky and then chasing you across the sky to punch you into another location in the world, and
Right.
Right.
But that's
They
not
call that
gameplay, though.
free fall combat thing. That little mechanic of theirs in DC. That's what
Or
it was.
Flash, doesn't he
well,
like
it was free fall, and then there was test your might, where you'd like fucking push them through like 5 buildings.
and
Oh,
close combat,
yes,
which everyone
yes.
forgets about. But
But it feels like a YouTube clip. It doesn't actually translate into like the punches and kicks of the gameplay, is what I mean.
No, it's you're watching little cutscenes.
Yeah.
I get what you mean.
that's just a difference in
It's an
attitude
yeah.
and culture, I think, between how Western devs make games and how Japanese devs make them.
Right.
Because
Yeah, I
like
mean-
what do you think of when you think of a super? A Western dev seems to think of like a cutscene sequence, or maybe they'll throw a quick time event in there if it's that kind of game. I think the industry has kind of grown out of quick time events now, but they used to do stuff like that. And whereas the way you see like a super executed in a Capcom game or a Tekken is much more along the lines of, we want to keep it as fast and snappy as possible.
Right.
That is true. Like in Japan, they're thinking, what if Ryu threw a bigger fireball, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
that is true. But I think there's another element to it, which is speed. The Western games and the Mortal Kombat games and the Injustice games have all been significantly slower. And that wasn't really the case back in the 90s with something like UMK3 or MK4. And I just feel like they really have a problem getting the pace of these games down.
Well, that's why X's 9 and X are the ones I like best, because they're the fastest ones. They're the most similar to Ultimate MK3. Like we were talking on the Discord earlier today about our reactions when X was coming out compared to our reactions when 11 was coming out, and how most of us walked out of the 11 reveal event with some like reservations about the gameplay after we'd gotten our hands on it for the first time. And Shad was saying that he was still hopeful because the slow pace reminded him of MK2, and I didn't say it at the time, but I've always thought in my head, MK2 is not the feel that I want from a modern MK game. Like, when I think of how an MK should play, I think of like UMK3.
Like fast and up in your face.
The thing
Yeah.
is, we had just had that out of X, and I wasn't crazy about the way that it felt. Like the whole neutral jump punch combo aspect, I never enjoyed it. Those were the few things about X that really kind of turned me off. So
Well,
I was interested in seeing what they could do with something that felt more like 2 to me, if they could improve upon that.
I
Not
like
really.
the way X felt, and I've never been a guy who looked back at the gameplay of MK1 and 2 and thought, that's what I think of when I think of Mortal Kombat. The
Two,
way
yes, not
MK1
one
and
so
2
much.
play is what I think of when I think of old things and limitations.
Yeah.
I think it's especially
once-
relevant here with a crossover, in my opinion.
Once dial combos were invented, MK found its identity, is the way I think of it in my head.
It's actually really funny that you say that because I remember nothing but criticism and hate for the entire dial-up combo system
Yeah,
all
I
throughout
remember
the 3 and
everyone.
4 life cycle. It's like this is Killer Instinct, but more work and just pointless. You know, I was back and forth on them for a good long while. Like now I accept them for what they were, and I can't picture 3 or 4 without them. At the time, they felt a little, I don't know, bandwagoning, and maybe not the best thing in the world.
I mean, here's the thing: is that the
The
entire
pace,
3D era also has dial-up combos, so there's
yes, and
way
they were
more of the
worse.
series history where they exist than where
Even
they go.
even I remember people were still complaining about dial-up combos once I was starting to get into like the series and shit.
Yeah, I mean, we're at a point now where you want a combo to feel more free flowing and to react to your button presses when you press the button. That's the game feel that feels good. So yeah, I'm not saying like dial-up combo should come back, but I mean having combos, like the existence of 3, 4, up to 7 and more hit strings, as opposed to like in MK2, a combo is
A glitch.
it's basically an exploit. Oh, I figured out that I can do the fan lift and then get 2 air attacks off of that. That's a combo in MK2, whereas a combo in every game after 3 is I do like a string. You're standing on the ground and I'm standing on the ground and I hit like high kick, high kick, high kick, back, high kick, and I kicked you 4 times so fast you can't defend it.
yes, but then what do you do after that? If you have a character that's worth a shit like Cabal or Human Smoke or Cyber Smoke, you're following that you're following that combo string, which usually knocks you up with something else, which is, like you put it, those quote unquote glitches from earlier games, because that's how combos evolved in the first place.
Well,
That's the origin of Street Fighter II combos.
you're
And
talking about the concept of juggling, which I've always
juggling,
been
yes.
bad at.
Get good, bruh. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
seriously.
I am never going to get accustomed to juggling. I'm a guy who prefers to play the Liu Kang, do the 4-hit string on the ground, and then if I get lucky, I can run up to you and do another 4-hit string, and you know.
I'm going to
That's
get you in a
That's why
room,
I
and you're
like
going to.
the high-low mix-ups in X, because it was an exploit where I could get around defense without incorporating hitting you while you're airborne.
An exploit.
Don't be that guy.
Got him.
I'm going to get you in a room.
You
I'm
know,
going to make you
whenever
play
I say
MK3, and you're going to play
you get
Ermac for
mad
10
at
hours,
me.
and you're going to like
Whenever
it.
you say a pun, it's the funniest thing in the world to you.
Because I'm looking for people to get mad at me, Razor.
All right, well, see, you succeeded. Congratulations.
You
Anyways,
have destroyed all expectations.
expectations.
All right.
Anyways, Razor, I'm very sorry that you fucking suck at juggling.
I do.
That's your fucking problem.
I will
Well,
say
it's a willing problem. I mean,
Once you learn UMK3 Ermac, everything flows naturally from there. Get good.
I'm just saying it's a willing problem. If he wanted to get better, he knows he could. He just doesn't want to spend the time and effort, and that's fine. That's his choice. I don't think it's not a big deal.
Look,
It is what it is.
It's a rhythm thing. It's like not being able to play a musical instrument. Maybe I could juggle if juggling was set to the tick of a metronome and I had one on me.
Well, here's the thing. I mean,
I use my phone for my metronome.
Brass tacks is. I was once not good at those things either, and by practicing and trying them in a real live environment, you get better. So if you really wanted to juggle, it would literally just take you a few hours, do some like try it for 2 hours in training mode, and then run
it's
like
not
sparring
like I
with
haven't
somebody.
tried. I played Johnny Cage in 9 was my main, and for everybody but me, the main strat for Johnny Cage in 9 is get them in the corner, pop them into the air, and do the same jab over and over again, like some janky bullshit.
Well, what I'm saying is,
I never got it down.
well, did you ever go into practice and like actually spend a couple hours trying? Or are you just saying you never could get it down in an actual match against somebody trying it for the first time? Because doing something in an actual match for the first time is not easy. You got to practice that by yourself.
That I have practiced, and it has helped very little. I just don't have rhythm.
I drop combos so hard online. It's not even funny, man. You don't even know.
I think we're getting a little bit off the
Yeah,
topic.
we
we're
are.
going back
Um,
to
Oh yeah,
MK
well, my
versus
whole
DC.
point was that if you're gonna have a crossover, it should be cool and not boring and not look like a Halloween party.
Okay, so whose turn is it?
Well, I have one more thing
Well,
to say.
Cyborg,
So
yeah.
I had one more point to make, and this was the actual start of the MK curse for me. And I was really excited when MK12 was like officially announced. In my video, I was very animated. But then, like later that night, I'm gonna be honest with you, I remembered I have a bit of an MK curse. Every year an MK game comes out, I have like one of the worst years of my life, like emotionally, mentally, whatever. Things go wrong. People die, relationships end, all the shit pours into. I'm not even kidding. And it started right here with MK versus DC. 2008 was like the year when my high school relationship end of 3 years and a bunch of shit happened. Almost died in a car wreck. Like I'm not even kidding. Like, and then with it continued with MK9, it continued with MKX, and it continued with MK11. Every one of those games, something horrible happened. Like somebody dies, or like I said, like relationship, or big depression, so on and so forth. A lot of issues come back, and it's crazy to think about it like that. So God, I am crossing my fingers with MK12 that nothing happens this year, because I just
Yeah,
I
that's
just
coming out this year, man.
like,
So you
well,
better
the
make it
thing
a good
is,
one.
so with MK versus DC, all the bad stuff. Well, actually, the car wreck almost happened when I was on my way home from getting MK versus DC. Like, it was out to get me in full force. As I was driving home, my girlfriend at the time was thumbing through the comic that came with the special edition of MK versus DC. And of course, I look over at the comic while I'm driving, like you shouldn't, and I'm like getting enamored and sucked away into the comic. Oh, like, oh, what's that? Oh, that's kind of neat. That's cool. And then we're going down, and like a stoplight that never is red was red that day. And I swear I had to slam on my brakes and quickly veer around the car that I was going to hit in front of me, and we were going fast. Like, that was when just coming back from getting the game. And like I said earlier in that year, a relationship ended that like ruined me emotionally. So what happens normally though, like with like MK11 and MK MK MK9, MK9 and MK11 were the worst. Those games, something bad happened like a week or two before the game came out, and when somebody like you care about dies, or something that really emotionally affects you, or like a super in like relationship, long-term relationship ends, that's hard to come back from within a week to be like, I want to play Mortal Kombat. So I'm hoping nothing happens, especially around the time of the game. I want to be able to just enjoy the game for once, because yeah, that is not a fun aspect. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention that, put that out there in the put that out there in the ether, that there's a Mortal Kombat curse for me. That's it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it sucks, but
Yeah,
we're
that's
gonna
rough,
get through
buddy.
this. We're gonna get through this. This is the year, right? Anyways, Razor.
Maybe it's every game that Cyrax is not in.
No, because MK9 was one of the worst ones. So
Okay, well, fair enough. But most of the time, Cyrax is not in it.
I haven't had any major tragedies, but I'm also not sure I've had a good year since like 2005. So
Mortal Kombat is killing this man slowly.
I can't blame it on Mortal Kombat if it's every year whether a game comes out or not, just every single year in a row for 15 years.
I
17 years.
also haven't had a very good year in quite a while.
Well, maybe
I
we're
think
just
maybe
waiting
I
on.
just have a bad life. I can't call it some kind of curse.
Maybe we're just waiting on the next good Mortal Kombat game. Like
It would certainly be of a comfort to me. It's not gonna.
it's not gonna fix all my problems, but
Yeah, but
it would be a nice comfort pillow.
It would be a step up from the usual.
I'll get into it, but yeah, starting in 2007, 2008 or so, things started going really downhill as I started getting into the later parts of life.
Maybe there's a Mortal
So-
Kombat curse for all of us.
Maybe.
Before this turns into a therapy session, Razor, go ahead.
Oh, I'm up. Okay. Well, when I think of like memories of MK versus DC, there's two major things that stand out. The first is the online reaction when the game was revealed. I remember we had some like hints and some like leaky type stuff of, oh, they're going to announce a DC crossover. That's going to be the next thing, and the entire internet was, I don't believe that one. That sounds like bullshit. And then when that's what it was, I remember so many people on the forums lost their minds with like disbelief and anger. Like they felt personally betrayed. How dare my dark and edgy, bloody fighting game crossover with comic book superheroes? Mortal Kombat is nothing like comics and superheroes. Mortal Kombat, the franchise where people wear colorful, sometimes spandex costumes and have superpowers, and that have been in comics since 1993.
And have fucking code names.
Yeah. Yeah. Fucking MK3 Sub-Zero doesn't look anything like Cable from the X-Men at all. How dare you?
Oh yeah, I did want to say that the actual character designs in MK vs DC were, I thought, like a good step forward for some of the characters. I thought they looked
Yeah.
really cool.
I mentioned before.
Real hit and miss there, champ. Real.
Yeah,
hit
well,
and miss.
yeah. I mean, but
Scorpion sub
and Shang.
Baraka.
I thought Shang looked pretty
Shang
cool.
Shang I think is okay. Katana sucks.
It's the worst Katana costume of all time. I have no idea what's going on with this weird shape of like suspendery things coming down her tits, and she has like a bulge, like, you know what I mean? Some kind of codpiece
Right.
situation makes me very uncomfortable. There are problems here.
Sonya
yeah,
looks terrible. Jax looks like a weird baby man in like a turtle shell.
You know what really struck me about one of the outfits is, so I've always sort of thought how weird it is that up until the NRS era, nobody in the franchise has ever worn a long sleeve shirt except for like 2 or 3 people, and one of them is Raiden. And then they put him in the game with superheroes, and like every male superhero wears long sleeves, like a full body getup, and all of a sudden it's the first time ever that Raiden has bare arms. What the fuck?
Bare arms would be pretty sweet for Raiden.
I don't know.
I do remember Raiden looking kind of weird with the sleeveless.
It's
even then I'm like, this looks wrong.
Yeah.
And he's got like the weird like the gold little fucking like circles to like pin his cape on, and it doesn't look good on Raiden like it does on like maybe Fujin or something.
You know, it's not the worst outfit. Like there's nothing super egregious in the design except for the lack of sleeves. And they did the same fucking thing when they put him in Injustice. What is the deal with that? Like, it has to be a deliberate thing if they've done it twice in 2 superhero games. Like, every time Raiden shows up around people who are wearing shirts, he's not allowed to wear a shirt. I don't get it.
It's one of the
So
rules.
in Injustice, he looked really bad. Like, I mean, really bad. Like, there was some weird, like, Elton John shit going on. But I think the sleevelessness kind of works in MK versus DC. I think it looks okay. And I'm going to go... That's not a popular take already, but I even think Katana looks all right in MK versus DC. I mean, I guess I see where you're coming from. I like the shade of blue. I think for the most part, it's her typical leotard. I think her hair and eyes look good. I like the blue gloves.
I don't...
Temp, I really hate it. I need you to like write out like a 5-page essay for homework on why you like Katana's versus DC outfit.
I mean, I said it.
Really bad.
I said it.
That's not good enough.
Weird leathery shapes and patches. That's like.
I think we said this on the Katana loss, but it really feels like an outfit that's designed for Chameleon. It's not like it's a. Okay, it's not a good outfit on a human being, but the designs themselves
I'd be like, what are these shapes? This is the same kind of visual gibberish that we had to deal with from like Armageddon, Jarek, and Kai.
I mean, it's a little abstract, but I don't think it looks bad.
Yeah, I don't think clothing should be abstract.
I think designs can be though. Like, I think you can have like sort of like a swirl or some sort of like pattern that makes the colors contrast. I don't think it looks that bad.
I hate it.
It's the it's the weird like
more than I
boob
hate her
gaps.
9 outfits, and her 9 outfits are bad.
It's like
the 9 outfit is pretty bad.
There's like it's like someone was trying to connect the dots but got lost part of the way along the way.
Yeah,
there's something compelling about it, but it's like it's 3/4 finished in weird ways. Yeah?
There's some kind of suspendery like pattern coming from her shoulders to her crotch, but it breaks off into these like U shapes and then stops, and there's a black space, and a whole new set of suspenders starts at the top of her abs.
I was just about to fucking complain about this when you started complaining about it. Like why does it break off into a U shape at her tits? Like, I don't get it.
The abdomen definitely looks like they were preparing for Devora.
So weird. But anyway, so I said there were 2 things that I think about when I think of MK versus DC. The first one is the reveal and how mad the fan base got.
Right.
Mortal Kombat's not superheroes. Shut the fuck up. Yes, it is. These characters are absolutely superheroes.
Oh god, I want to clip that part.
That's why I like
put
it.
That
That's
in
why
the
I
intro.
enjoy the game.
Yeah, I like things where characters with code names and powers and flashy costumes fight each other. That's comic books.
Scorpion literally takes inspiration from fucking Ghost Rider.
It goes back to
He didn't
when people.
always.
Oh, he absolutely did. It's always been there.
It goes.
It was just less on the nose before Deadly Alliance.
The fire around the skull was in the fucking comic.
This is a similar thing to when people thought like Mortal Kombat shouldn't be colorful or fun or all that kind of. It can't be zany ever. Like, what game franchise have you been playing all this years?
And look,
because
I
all the way back to
understand-
2, it had super color and zany elements.
I understand having reservations about, like, obviously the violence was toned down and the finishing moves in MK versus DC are just a bad joke.
Oh,
like,
come on.
The whole thing did not work.
You cannot look at that Kano fatality with the fucking somersault and shit and think that wasn't cool. Come on.
You don't have to shitpost all the time.
Clown Shang Tsung.
We'll get there.
That's a bridge.
Get there.
That's a bridge to MK9.
That's
anyway.
Game, Chad. We'll get there.
But anyway, the second thing I think of when I think of MK versus DC is that I honestly think this game has the best Sonya gameplay that she's had since 1995 or 96.
Yeah.
And it's still the best since then because like it was the first time in over a decade that she had her full set of MK3 moves, and every game that's come out since then has subtracted another move. Like, just having her diagonal bike kick, and I love the addition of EXing it into a second bike kick. Like, that's fucking beautiful, man. This was the last time I had fun playing as Sonya.
I thought you were gonna say Mortal Kombat. Like, god damn.
Most of the rest of the game was jank as fuck, but Sonya was spectacular, and I miss her. I miss real Sonya.
It's the Wolverine picture. He's just stroking.
I mean, it's a shame about her jaw, but
yeah,
I really miss real Sonya gameplay.
I can get past the jaw if she wasn't wearing just like typical clothes with like a white top and just like
I mean,
regular ass.
the top is boring, but they are like army pants and a beret.
It's
I
the
gotta
worst
say,
goddamn Sonya outfit she's ever
yeah,
worn.
I'm with
It's just
Shad.
boring.
I
Right.
don't
It's
know
awful.
if that's true.
I'm with-
I don't know if that's
I'm with
true.
Shad, man. You got the
Nah.
thong tan line, and then
I
you
like
got
the
the
thong tan
choker,
line.
and then you got the.
She
What is-
wasn't wearing a top. She was wearing a piece of fabric that did not at all conceal her tits.
Oh,
And
yeah,
look,
you-
I know.
You
we're
can
in
see the
middle of
oh,
this-
just
Well,
zoom in. You can
yeah,
zoom. You
like,
can see the
Her
nipples.
nipples are in fact visible in this
Yeah,
game.
I was about to say.
Like, I know we're in the middle of this huge controversy of an age about things that are being covered up and this and that.
Yeah.
There's extremes to both sides, and this
Right.
is on the one. This is
There you
not
go.
this is not something a fucking like army sergeant wears, okay?
Right,
just
preach it.
It's
It's character
terrible.
dependent, man. It's character
fucking
dependent.
terrible.
Sonya is not one of
I'm
these
gonna be
characters that needs to have
honest,
her nipples
man.
showing.
I'm gonna be honest, man. 9 is worse than this.
No, I don't agree with that. I
No,
think
9 is.
better than this.
She
This
just
is-
has her tits straight up out. At least she's wearing something over them.
So my thing has always been like, if you're gonna go super like modest, or if you're gonna go super risque, I will take either as long as it's not boring. And NK versus DC Sonya is just so dull. Like okay, she's got pants, great, but like nothing about this costume jumps out at me. At least I feel like I don't know. There's some personality to her.
So
in
here's
K9
the
Primary.
thing, though. Here's the thing, though, is that people forget her alt costume in 9 was this, but with short shorts and a pair of sunglasses.
No, it's a Sarah Connor costume.
So if we're talking about worst Sonya costume, 9 alt trumps this by being this but less.
I mean, we can just agree that they're both bad.
I mean, they're
mean,
all
the
terrible.
hair and the sunglasses.
Every one of
make
them.
Like, if we're
elevated
talking
K9's
about
alt.
boring, I hate her fucking blue primary in the last 2 games.
Yeah,
Yes,
I agree. Well,
that-
yeah.
yeah.
And we all agree that Sonya hasn't like really looked good since she was wearing spandex in like 4 and 3. Okay,
The-
Sure.
thank you.
I like DA. I like her DA costume.
I like
Yeah.
DA, I like Shaolin Monks.
I like the DA alt.
The,
Shaolin
the-
Monks is pretty good too.
The DA one, I think, suffers because the models are bad in that game. But I think like if you make the jacket more like actually proportional,
Yeah, like
that would look great.
If she didn't have such a like mom hairstyle, Deadly Alliance would be great.
She's very Kim Basinger or Basinger in that game.
I
don't
believe
know
it's
why.
Basinger.
I honestly
Facing
think
her,
her
yeah.
face looks pretty Carrie Hoskins there.
Yeah, her face
A
is fine.
Singer.
I still think the best looking Sonya is Shaolin Monks to this day. I still think that is when she looked the best to me.
But anyway,
up
back
there.
to versus
It's up
DC.
there.
The-
A wedgie. Anyway.
all I'm saying is that
God.
gameplay wise, that was the last time I felt like Sonya played like Sonya.
What is
and
it with these people
coming,
giving her a
coming
choker?
off of the 3D
and-
era, coming off of the 3D era where Sonya, Jax, and Johnny didn't feel like themselves in those games either, it was really refreshing to have like Sonya's moves back, and continually disappointing that with every NRS game she has less of her moves back. All I ask for is a ring toss, a leg grab, and the diagonal bite kick. That's 3 things. It doesn't feel like a lot to ask for.
But what about the arc kick though?
Well, then you get into an argument about which is more canon or should be more canon, the arc kick or the square wave, and I've never really liked the square wave, and now I'm getting nitpicky. I don't want to go there. Ring toss, leg grab, bike kick. Those are the 3.
I'd like the arc kick back. I would not mind it returning. It was fun.
Yeah.
I like
cool.
the arc kick.
The arc kick was fine.
All right.
I'm not against the arc kick.
Versus DC. Shad.
Oh god. Okay. The thing I remember the most, the memory I bring forward with me the most about that game is, like you guys were saying, there were all these rumors and whatnot, and nobody believed it. And I remember the massive fan backlash once it came out. But most of all, I remember my own reaction to it at the time. I was working. I had been in the game industry for a couple of years at that point. I was working at this third-party game testing place, and I just remember staring at like the Batman versus Sub-Zero wallpaper, thinking, "Huh, weird. I don't know if I like where this is going. Like, it was before like the buyout, but like I had this sense of foreboding, really. Not to be
Yeah,
dramatic about it, but like I felt like we were just hitting a point that of permanent change. Like, you mentioned that a lot of people were like, oh, the worlds don't mix, they don't collide. Like, well, yeah, obviously, yeah, MK's always had that comic book element to it. Yeah, definitely. But the other thing is that MK always felt kind of like insular. It always felt like its own little world, you know?
there
Like,
was that like small indie like not that it was secret or something, but that it was like an Image comic you don't expect to ever cross over with other comics, you know?
yeah, it was kind of like that. It was its own little world. Like, no different than like if you were, say, playing Resident Evil games and you'd just been used to running around in Raccoon City for years and years. And suddenly, this little world, which is, to be very fair, a massively popular and successful franchise by this point in time, was now crossing over with like some of the biggest names in like superhero entertainment and characters who, by and large, are pretty much like face mascots for a major entertainment company.
Right.
And I just remember feeling like everything's changing now. We're just entering this completely new, different world. And it was like weird and foreboding and strange and intimidating. Like, I wasn't on like the message boards going, oh shit, it's the end of the world, Mortal Kombat's over, or anything, but I definitely felt like something's changing.
I do
Things are never going to be the
remember
same.
I do remember that even though I thought everybody was sort of being silly and exaggerating how upset they were about the idea of like MK and superheroes, but at the same time, I did have this feeling of like, gosh, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was a lot of years ago. It seems really late to be jumping on the copy that game bandwagon. And it did feel like the rumors were out there that Midway was in financial trouble, and you'd hear stories about like one investor selling to another investor, and the company has a new CEO like every year or two, and
Yeah.
it did sort of feel like this was a warning sign that we were getting close to the end of something.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, I was still in like, denial. I'm like, we get back to see what happened after Armageddon one day, right, guys? I mean, we would, but maybe not in the ways we wanted to. But
Like, I did
like,
kind of hope
I
that,
didn't want to believe it was the end, but I kind of knew something was changing. Something
yeah, I
was,
hoped at least,
yeah,
okay, this is a sales stunt. Maybe it'll be a really successful sales stunt, and it'll, keep the company on life support for another few years.
yeah,
That is not the way it went.
no,
I mean, MK versus DC was a really surprisingly well-selling game.
Yep.
Uh, I mean, we've talked about before, like, people think the 3D era was some kind of like financial flop, and no, the 3D era games were some of the best-selling fighting games of the aughts.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
they.
that time period was a time period where fighting games as a genre were sort of down.
It was
But even then,
super
you had like,
dead.
people still think of like Tekken 5 as being one of the bigger Tekkens, and yet
Right.
the 3D era games outsold Tekken 5. But even then, like, we're talking about a difference between like modest but good numbers. Like, an
Yeah,
indie title or a
Deception on PS2 sold almost 2 million copies.
yeah, 2 million copies is really good for a game that is below what we now think of as AAA. Like, obviously, AAA is a whole thing unto itself, and Mortal Kombat joined AAA with MK9, so the numbers are way different now. But it was never failing. The reason Midway went down was every franchise they were trying to get off the ground, except Mortal Kombat, was doing poorly.
Right.
So what else? I was actually really actively reading comics at the time for the first time around this period since I was a kid. And the catalyst for that had been Jason Todd coming back as Red Hood in the comics, which everyone shat on, but who's laughing now, bitches? Like he was Robin when I was a kid, so them bringing him back was just beautiful to me. Like it got me into just everything, reading comics and whatnot. And in a weird way, once I kind of digested the idea of Mortal Kombat versus DC being a thing that was going to happen, I was more excited about the prospect of like playing as DC characters in a new fighting game, and I was about playing Mortal Kombat characters almost. It's strange. Anyway, was really on board with John Tobias coming back and doing a comic, and it was like all sorts of really wonderful to see his little doodles again. And I don't remember the comic at all now, but I remember enjoying flipping through it when it was out.
There's not really a lot of substance to the comic.
No, it was very
it's a very short sort of a recap of the basic plot of the game. Like it just sort of shows you Dark Khan forming out of his lava rock body out of some kind of void and talking about I need to inspire rage in these fighters to get stronger. And the only thing that's really interesting that you see in the comic is there's a scene of the rage causing Johnny Cage, Aquaman, Goro, and Robin to disappear. So we get to see what costume designs they might have had if they had been in the game. But it was nice to see Tobias draw stuff.
Yeah, like it was just nice for the novelty of seeing him back again. The comic itself, I remember being like a 3-minute affair.
The other
digestible and ultimately forgettable.
The other notable thing about the comic is that it's actually really tiny, like physically. Like you think
small.
of a comic book, you expect it to be the size of a normal comic book, but this was the size of a Game Boy game instruction manual.
It was like those little manuals for games, like strategy guides you'd get in like issues of EGM. They're like basically like travel pocket size, pretty much. They're so tiny.
Yeah, it was a weird choice to make it so small, but I guess it has to fit inside the case the game comes in.
At the time, once it was out, I remember loving half the outfits and just despising the other half. To this day, MKDC Scorpion, MKDC Shang are some of my favorite designs for the characters. Barak is probably my favorite design he's ever had, and like just barely over the classic like white shirt design. But I really love that Baraka outfit for him. He looks great. But the other half of it, not so much. And
I've always been amused by the fact that Baraka, Kano, Raiden, Sub-Zero, and like the top half of Sonya's head are all reused in 9.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even back then, I noticed it. It didn't bother me, but it was just something that I noticed.
And then Shao Kahn's skin appears as his for the Armageddon flashback. It's reused there.
What's weird about that is I think Katana's model, never mind the costume for a second, but the model actually looks better in MK versus DC than it does in 9.
Everybody's bodies were like there were real problems with the shoulders being too wide in 9 and all kinds of like weird anatomy issues. 9 was not their best work, but oddly I'd say it was better than Injustice 1, which came out after.
Well, before we deep dive into 9, Shad, you got any more on DC?
Oh God, yes, absolutely. I'm not done. Okay. The things I remember most. Okay, starting with the positive. I was so incredibly happy that the gameplay seemed to have actually solidified into something more concrete, more responsive, a bit more solid. We'd finally gotten away from like the jank, clunky 3D era combat, and it was like, okay, now we're gonna get back to doing what a 2D game feels like it should play like. With a bit of the MK4 sidesteps, it was good. Like, I remember the game felt nice and tight in that regard, and I was really happy about it. I'm trying to come up with more positives, and I'm really struggling here. I'm trying not to be very negative Nancy about this, but
I mean, that's fine. Negative
Oh,
Nancy is a
my
go.
God,
If
it's
you wanna go
just-
that direction.
the word I come away with whenever I think about the game and the time I had with it, and that covers most of my experience, was just dumb. Okay? The game just felt dumb. The story felt dumb. The story mode was novel and new at the time, but I was hoping we'd move on to something else when MK9 came out. The heroic brutalities were mostly dumb. It felt like they shouldn't have bothered. Like, I would have taken an MK versus DC game that had no finishers whatsoever. It felt like they were there for the sake of being there because we expected some kind of finisher, which I get that most people probably didn't, but me personally, I'd have been happier without.
Yeah,
Fucking
I have to
the
say, I've
Shang
always
clown
felt
shit and
they're so bad that it actually would have been worse. It would have been better to have nothing than to have what we got with these fucking fatalities.
and John Vogel wrote this
Uh,
story, and I was like, this is the best you got, buddy? Really?
You keep saying
Well-
Shang clown shit. Does he turn into a clown in versus DC?
No.
So what happened?
So,
That's MK9, right?
In
Yeah.
MK9, okay, no, let me step back. In versus DC, Joker has a fatality where
Right,
he
right.
like does
I'm
a fucking
familiar.
like fake gun, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
I was just
and it
making
actually
sure.
kills
Like
him.
it was MK9
Well-
where he turned to the clown
Maybe
and
my
was
memory is
doing the
failing me.
Joker.
No,
I
no,
seem
no,
to
no.
remember-
You're right. No, because it with versus DC, the American releases they had to censor the Joker and Deathstroke's fatalities.
Right.
What the hell did
So-
Shang do for fatality then in DC?
He
steals your
stole their
soul.
soul. He steals your soul, and you turn gray. I
Yeah, it's
forget which
actually-
other one
it's
it was.
okay.
You know what? Then you know what? Never mind. I'm thinking of
You're thinking of the
I'm
MK9
probably-
fatality
No,
where
here-
he
you're
turns
here's
into a
thinking of a
the thing,
clown.
though.
nine
Probably-
fatal. What's happened?
Here's
That's
the thing,
probably.
though,
I'm thinking of an MK9 fatal, and I'm like remembering the fact that he turned into the Joker or a
The
clown
reason-
and
It
did the
was-
Joker's fatality from DC.
Yeah.
So it's
You got
mixed
it.
up in my mind,
but
and I'm
it
doing
was-
that thing that
it-
people did.
It was
the
a
without
big,
reason he
Spider-Man
it was a
has
big
it.
spite thing because they were spiteful because they had to censor it for the U.S. release.
Yeah, the reason he has it is because of MK versus DC. So it is MK versus DC's fault.
It's straight
There
up
we go.
the same animation as the
Yeah.
Joker fatality.
Yeah, they
wanted
wanted
to
to show
up
it
the
without the
gore.
headshot censored.
There you go.
Even then, like the headshot censoring isn't even fucking bad. Which, you know,
They
If
just
our-
they pull the camera away completely so you don't see the character getting shot.
Well, the thing is,
it's
like,
not even that bad without it. You know,
well, I mean-
I understand like why they'd feel a little salty because it's like
they already had the
fucking-
uncensored version out there, though. Like, it was
it was
viewable
in
online.
it was in other versions of the game.
Yeah, so I mean, there's.
Um,
I think it was a waste to make that Shang's
Well, here-
fatality in MK9.
It was such a waste because
It
it's
really
a fucking
was.
soul steal.
The other thing though is that every asset they're able to reuse is one less thing they had to make.
Sure. I mean, yeah. Still.
And you look at stuff like how many reused assets went into Quan Chi, how Cyber Sub-Zero doesn't have voice in his ending. Like, it's obvious
it's
9
just-
was rushed.
Yeah, I
So
forgot about
every
the
bit
cyber sub
every
thing.
bit they could possibly squeeze in there to get it done on time, you know?
But yeah, we'll get more into that. So Shad.
The other things I'm recalling, MKDC is the only Mortal Kombat game for which I actually have a platinum trophy. And I understand that very few people actually have a platinum from MKDC because of those fucking combo trials.
Oh, I didn't even try them after
Oh
the first couple.
no!
And
Chad,
I did it. I did it. I sat there for 2 days and I got all of them down, including one of Raiden's. I think it's number 9 or 10, which is actually broken. You cannot do it the way the combo like listing specifies. You have to actually add an extra like lightning bolt juggle or some shit. But no, I did it. I have the platinum to prove it. And I went online with that game.
Oh god.
I did not consider Deception or Armageddon at that time worth even trying with, but I tried. I tried, and I got my fucking like 20 ranked wins in a row, and it was a goddamn nightmare because of fucking Flash and fucking Superman, who had a ground pound infinite that was so exploitable.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
you could just ground pound, walk upwards, ground pound. It was the Borai Cho puke infinite, but I don't think you even actually had to dodge or anything. You could just ground pound to infinity. That's how bad and unbalanced the game was.
yeah.
Anyway, I don't
I'm
like
s-
interacting with people online, and that game is probably the reason why.
I'm salty. I had 19 wins in a row trying to get that fucking thing, and then the 20th one, I went up against some like amazing Wonder Woman that just absolutely obliterated me. I had no
My
answer.
20th fight I remember distinctly was a Superman, and I saw the round opening with a ground pound, and I'm like, no, not even. And I pulled every cheap piece of bullshit that I knew out, and I just trounced the guy. Like, no, it did not happen. But no, I have the MKDC Platinum. I'm questionably proud of it, and after that I kind of tried to get the other ones in 9 and X, but I just never had the patience to just go that far, have that many
Mhm.
matches online against people. I can't deal with it anymore. I just don't want to.
Yeah,
I
I
can't deal
don't.
with online children. I just don't.
I don't for a second see how the juice was worth the squeeze.
I have nothing to prove to anyone. I've done my time. But anyway, that's how I feel about MK versus DC. Just dumb. The endings were dumb. The rage was dumb. The story was dumb. The heroic brutalities were dumb. And I was done with the game inside of like a couple of weeks. I just didn't. I was like, fine, this is a thing. It happened. I had a bit of fun with it. I'm just ready to move on with my life. And it was like we were saying, it was kind of getting to be a bad period for me too. My dad was starting to get down there in terms of health, and when 2011 came along, well,
Yeah, man, it sounds
Yeah.
like this Mortal
Before we
Kombat
move
curse.
on to before we move on to 9, I have two things to say. The first is, remember that stupid special move Wonder Woman had where she'd jump in the air and spin?
God damn it!
And
That's the salty fucking thing that kicked my ass.
that shitty special move. What the fuck?
I
Why
was
does it
so
look
pissed
like
off.
that?
I was so pissed off.
She's just A posing in the air. And second, I think if we're talking about strange roster inclusions, like about like the most iconic, I think for the DC side, um, Captain Marvel Shazam is kind of an interesting pick.
Well,
I never heard about that character before. I only heard about the Marvel Captain Marvel because again, I mentioned I only liked Marvel as a kid.
I mean, that's interesting because Marvel is one of the most obscure motherfuckers in history.
Right,
Like,
right.
as a guy who's read both sides of comics, like, since I was, like, a teenager, I've been reading DC since I was, like, 10 years old, on and off. But, like, Marvel's been dead since the early 80s or something. Like, I've never seen a comic with him in it, actually.
Well, I think he
I
actually
had
died of. I think he died of cancer or leukemia
Yes,
or
he
something.
got
So they've all
cancer. It was
so
a
they've always felt that like bringing him back would kind of trivialize a real world illness. I think that's why they never did it.
yeah.
I had like this giant Marvel encyclopedia that had like all these characters and shit.
I see.
And one of them was Captain Marvel. But I think what's interesting is that the one that I think they might have the one that they primarily had art of was I forget his fucking name. The one that had like the helmet and shit.
Oh,
That had like a green
his son
Janice
Janice
Vale.
Vale.
Janice
Yeah,
Vale. That's his name. That's the one that I knew.
right.
Uh
He was active in the early odds.
yeah. But I just never heard of Captain Marvel
Well,
Shazam at the
so
time.
here's the thing is that they actually Ed has commented on this, and the reason
He loves that
Billy
character.
the reason Billy Batson's in MK versus DC is because his two favorite superheroes growing up were The Flash and Captain Marvel.
Right.
Shazam.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also like obviously there's a lot of Alex Ross influence in the game. Some of the characters' faces are based on his artwork. They got him
Right.
to paint a cover for the
Special edition.
collector's edition. Alex Ross is also a big Shazam guy and
Right.
has painted him a lot and made him a major character in the story Kingdom
Kingdom
Come
Come,
and that
yeah.
sort of
Right.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, was Kingdom Come for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I always thought like the weirdest pick on the DC side for me is Deathstroke.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Deathstroke
like-
was also interesting for me because I never heard of him as Deathstroke before.
Yeah, I mean there were
My introduction was through the Teen Titans cartoon.
where they just call him by his real name Slade, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I think it says his entire name, according to the comics, is Deathstroke the Terminator. Maybe there
Yeah.
were
Yeah, it is.
maybe there were like issues there. I don't know.
Well,
Well-
that's dumb.
No, the reason
Or
the
it might have actually
cartoon-
been like the word death in
yes,
his name.
that's it. The reason the cartoon called him Slade is because the Deathstroke has the word death in it, and it was a cartoon for smaller children.
Oh, poof. Fucking.
Well,
I don't know.
I'm not gonna
that's
call him
why
Stroke.
you watch 90s Spider-Man and everybody says I'm going to destroy you instead of I'm going to kill you because we can't talk about death in a kids show.
I feel like you could
He's in the
somehow.
next dimension now.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
remember when JLU couldn't use Black Manta because they had an Aquaman pilot for a TV show
Yes, there were
they had to
character
change
embargoes, so they
the-
called him Devil
Devil
Ray.
Ray. I
Huh?
feel like you could make a stupid argument that says like the devil is satanic, so you can't call him Devil Ray. Like
Yeah,
or
but it's also like the
shit.
name of a real animal, and
Oh,
honestly,
that wouldn't fucking. convince me.
JLU was targeted for older audiences. They actually never had problems saying the word death in JLU.
Deathstroke the Terminator.
Also,
In
Snowman,
fact-
what you said literally happened with Dragon Ball Z with Mr. Satan. That actually happened. So-
In the episode of JLU that Devil Ray appears, Devil Ray fucking dies on screen. Fucking Dead Man possesses Batman and shoots Devil Ray with a gun.
That's funny. But I think that's everything with versus DC, right?
Yeah.
I think we've about covered it. Yeah.
All right. And on that note, thanks everybody for listening, and we will see you soon.
Take care, everybody.
See you later, nerds.
Bye.
Have a good night, folks.
Friendship again?